guys, welcome back to the narrowboat restoration. For anyone who's new here, I'm Nisha, and with my boyfriend Mike we've been restoring a 45-foot narrowboat, and in this vlog I'm going to be walking you through how I have calculated our solar power needs and the size of the solar power system, and I'm also going to walk you through how I've created an electrical plan for the narrowboat which will outline things like where the plug sockets will go, where the light switches will go, lights, appliances, and all of that jazz, so that we're fully prepared before we reach the electric install phase. I'm really sorry if you were hoping this would be the diesel heater install video, but we are just waiting on a few more parts to arrive, and then once they do, Mike is going to be installing that because he's got experience with it already and it just makes sense, and so I am taking the lead on the electrics instead. The engine bay and the entryway to the boat are really coming along. I've painted over the oxide in the bay with floor paint. All that's left to do in there is scrape, rust convert and paint the ceiling of the engine bay, and then clean and service the engine. We've insulated the garage, so the next exciting projects will be replacing the old steps, including the metal frame they sit on, and installing a diesel heater. And after all of that, we'll be fitting the electrics in the entryway too. So there's a lot of important transformations happening in this really small area, and it's all really exciting stuff. My heart to race. Girl, you're looking like $1,000,000. Something about the way you strut your stuff. Oh, girl, you're fine as you wanna. What I'm supposed to do? Something told me got time to lose. Go ahead and bust a move. Funny thing about love, when it comes and goes. So now that we're getting closer and closer to installing the electrics, it's time to make an electrical plan. So I am not an electrician, so just keep that in mind when you watch these videos. So if there is anybody here who is an electrician, or maybe you have experience with 12V electrics, then we would really appreciate any input, feedback or advice that you have. Just leave it for us in a comment. We're always super grateful for the comments that you guys leave, especially when they are comments about the build or about a mistake that we've made or something that we could improve. Yeah, we just couldn't be more grateful, so thank you. I am really loving the electric side of this though. I'm really enjoying researching it, learning about it, and I just can't wait to get my hands on the actual gear, so let's dive in. First, I wrote down all of our electrical appliances that we'd be taking with us onto the boat, and then I wrote down the wattage of each of those appliances. And you can usually find it on the charger of the item or on the device itself, like you might be able to see hopefully in my camera on this device. If you can't, I will just put a photo of this on the screen. On this charger it says that it is 85 watts. So I would write down my MacBook Pro 85 watts, and if it doesn't tell you the watts on your device, then just do amps times volts and you'll get the watts. And then I also wrote down an estimate of how many hours each day that we'd be using the appliances. There are certain appliances that you just aren't going to use every single day, like for instance if you have a washing machine or something like that, and so in that case I would just tally up how many hours per week I think that we would use that, and then I'd divide that by 7. Then I wrote down whether the devices were DC or AC. DC stands for direct current and AC stands for alternating current. The way that I differentiate between whether a device is DC or AC is whether it can be a 12-volt appliance or whether it is 240. So for instance, you can buy 12-volt fridges, you can buy 12-volt TVs, and in that case you would go for DC. There might occasionally be though a few items that you have that are 240, and in that case you would need an inverter. An inverter converts DC electricity, which is what you get from solar panels, into AC electricity, which is what you get from the grid. So the calculator then gives you your results, and it tells you your daily power usage, what battery size you need, solar panel size, charge controller size, and inverter size. Just keep in mind that it is the minimum solar power that you will need, so you'll need to go higher than what it says. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you are trying to go for lithium batteries, which is what we are choosing to go for, then you're advised to only use 80% of the battery, because if you keep using more than that, then it kills the battery off a lot sooner. Whereas if you stick to using 80%, it can make your batteries last for a lot more years. And with AGM batteries, I think that you're meant to only use 50%, so it's even lower than lithium. So this example says 195 amp hours are needed in the battery area. So I wouldn't go and buy exactly 195 amp hours, because I'd actually only be able to use 156 of that if it's a lithium battery system, and I want them to last long. So I'd always go a bit higher on the battery side too. Maybe that's just me being a bit over precautious or something, but that's what I'm gonna do. Until recently, I knew nothing about what AC was, DC, inverters, solar power calculators, none of this stuff. So if it does sound daunting to you right now, just know that with a bit of effort and research in places like YouTube and Google, you will get there eventually. So the next part of the electrical planning process is to make an electrical map, I like to call it. Whether that's the technical term, I have no idea, but I am making an electrical map of where the plug sockets, appliances, light switches and lights, anything electrical, where that will all go on the narrowboat, so that we can use that plan when it comes to the wiring. This is a bird's eye view of the boat, it's not to scale, and the layout will likely change slightly, but this is what it is for now. To start with, I'm making a symbol for each electrical component that I need to map out. So that would be 12V sockets, light switches, lights, electrical appliances, and 240 sockets. And then I'm giving them their own colours so that we can easily identify what's what when it comes to mapping them out on the layout. Then the first thing that I'll do is label where the electrical appliances will go. So things like the fridge, TV, my workspace where the laptop will be. We'll have things like a tabletop dishwasher. So I've color coded all of those in red so that we can see where they all are, which will hopefully make it easier to see where sockets approximately need to be and also how many sockets are needed. Obviously this isn't to scale and this is just a rough plan, but I've made it to give us a good idea of what we need, or an idea of whether we need to simplify things. So next I'm adding in roughly how many 12V sockets that we need and where, and then I'm going to be adding where we might need 240 sockets. It's helpful to have your list of devices from the solar power calculator open when doing this, because you'd need 240 sockets for all of the devices that you marked on that as AC. Then I'm using yellow for lights, which will go in the ceiling, and I'm just dotting them approximately where I think they'd go. It might change, who knows. If you have any input on any of this plan, then do let me know in a comment below, but please only people with experience with electrics. The last thing that I'm doing is planning in pink roughly where we'd put light switches. So one for the kitchen, one for the workspace, one for the bathroom and for the bedroom. I might be able to simplify this and remove the workspace one by putting a battery powered light there instead, or a rechargeable light. I'll be putting those kinds of lights at either side of the head of the bed as well, so that they will act as reading lights and we won't need to run wires for extra lights like that. Lastly, I'm drawing in what we like to call the garage area. It's the stern where we have 2 cupboards above the engine bay, and one is for the electrics and one is for storage. But we either want to put like coats and shoes and bags in there, or a washing machine. So I've put a 240 socket in there in case we might want the washing machine. Where you see multiple green circles and multiple blue triangles is just to tell us the maximum of how many 12V or 240 sockets we need around that area. So that's the rough plan. I'll most likely go through it and simplify it as much as possible and check things over, get it a bit more finalised, but that's roughly how I've made it. Thanks for watching, and thank you to everyone that bought us a coffee last week. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to watch this one next, where I walk you through what the boat layout will be, or this one, which is all about second-hand boats versus new shells.